Right. So apologies if the sound quality isn't particularly good, but we'll make do. So nice and relaxed as you stand, feet about hip width apart as always, sort of parallel lines really, more or less, insofar as there's any straight lines available to us in our bodies, which there aren't really, and just turn in very gently from the center of your body so weight a little bit forwards in your feet, hips dropping back, just this slight change. When you bring your weight forwards, you can see there's I'm exaggerating a little bit, you see there's an angle there, and we correct that angle by just allowing the hips back. Just be careful that you're not doing what is a very common habit, which is to do this to correct that feeling of being thrown forward. You can see I've thrown my posture out, I'm sticking my bottom out, the back's strained and so on and so forth. So it's not the shoulders going back, it's the hips going back. The shoulders, of course, follow the movement. It's a small adjustment, but those of you who are familiar with this will know, which I think probably all of you by now, will be very much aware that this is a very strong change in our body. And just let yourself, in a sense, settle into this. So quite naturally, we want to learn these things. That's what that's what you've all come to the session for. And it's quite natural, I think, to find ourselves thinking, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and so on and so forth. But this initial period really isn't about that. It really isn't about, I've got to do this, I've got to X, Y, or Z. It's very much trying to just find a way of standing, a way of moving. There's just that little bit freer that doesn't put a strain on our upper body. And really, this is what the exercise is about. This little bit of movement here. It's just that with my arms tucked behind my back there, it actually starts to get quite uncomfortable. So I let them drop. And because they've dropped down, they're moving. So don't look at what I'm doing in my shoulders. Think, oh, I've got to do this, because you'll pull everything else out. The key thing, thinking about your legs, is to give yourself time and practice enough so that these muscles here at the front of the thighs, the quadricep muscles, actually get a chance to condition. It's a generalization, I realize, but what we tend to do is stand with our legs very stiff. And that puts a lot of pressure on our knees, puts a lot of pressure on hips and ankles as well, but mostly on our knees. That's where people feel it. So we go around like this, and every time we impact the ground, there's a jar to the knees. Knees are not meant to take that. When we soften the knees here, and the hips go back, the knees can no longer physically support us. So the muscles of the legs have to do that. This is why if you have trouble with your knees and you go to a physiotherapist, you go to a trainer or something like that and say, I've got trouble with my knees, what can I do? They'll tell you to strengthen the quadricep muscles. And I mean, I think other muscles in the legs are significant as well, so that your knee joint is supported. So the very act of going from this to this, which is quite a small change, actually puts a great deal of effort into those quadricep muscles. If you're not used to this, they'll get tired very quickly. When they get tired, they fail, they stiffen up, and when they stiffen up, the emphasis comes back on the knees. So that's one thing to think about with this, that actually if you're having problems with your knees, and it's not just if you're new to this, which can apply, but it might just be that your legs are a bit tired if you had a busy weekend or something like that. When you're aware of that kind of stiffening up, stop, shake out, and then that will help the muscle to recover, and then go back into it. This is not meant to be an endurance test for the knees or any other part of your body. So that's one thing to think about, and to maintain your practice. Do it on a daily basis so that over a period of time those legs get stronger. Second thing to think about is what's happening here in the middle of your body. And this gets a bit technical. It's not a massive problem to begin with, but it's something to think about, that when I turn, it's naturally the case that my knees will, or my legs will turn with me. So two things about that. One is, if you're trying to turn too far, then if I do this, look, you can see what's happening to my legs. So don't turn too far. That's probably the most immediate solution. And then those of you who have been coming for some time, and you've probably heard me say this, there is a little correction you can make. As I turn, this knee gets twisted in. And so the correction I make is to gently wind it out, so that those muscles on the outside of the legs engage and the ones on the inside of the leg stretch out a little bit. That takes a long time to build. You've got to be really careful that you don't start overcompensating. But the main thing is, to begin with, not to turn too far. You don't need to turn a long way in the center of your body to get the arms to move a great deal. I can probably illustrate that if I can find something. Yeah, I'll just use a pencil. If I hold this pencil here, there, and I just hold it in the middle, I wiggle it around a little bit, hardly any movement in the middle, and yet a great deal of movement at the end. If I were to spin it around, then you can see the middle part of the pencil isn't moving that much, but the tip is. In other words, it's like a wheel with spokes. Your arms are like the spokes. The center of your body is like the hub of the wheel. So you don't have to move very far. And so you can reduce the amount of movement in the center of your body without losing the range of movement on the periphery of your body, by gradually becoming aware of those connections from hips to ribs, from ribs to shoulders, and so on and so forth. And you just have to be patient. We should think in terms of cultivating these ideas. Just as you might grow a plant, you might maybe over the weekend with the sunny weather, you are planting bulbs. You're probably not expecting them to flower today. You're probably, if you're somewhat of a gardener, which I admit I'm not, you're probably thinking in a couple of weeks' time or a month's time they'll look lovely, but not today. It's too soon. So, in the same way that you wouldn't force a plant to grow, don't force these changes in your body or your mind. Give yourself time and just feel comfortable in the movement. Remembering to rest, sit down for a while if you feel you need to. Feel free to contact me. If say you want more information about strengthening the legs and so on and so forth, I'm happy to help. And then, without losing that feeling of sinking in your hips, turn your hands palm forwards and raise them up very gently. Only as far as it's comfortable again. Try not to do this. You see my shoulders coming up, and that involves everything coming up. If I do it from the side, when I'm here, when my shoulders come up, notice how everything comes up. And once again, I become top heavy. And then just letting your hands drop down. Then give your legs a little shake. So with your feet below your hips, toes pointing forwards, just begin to rock your weight gently forwards and backwards. So you pivot on the ankles and you feel more of your weight going towards the ball of each foot. You pivot back and you feel your weight going towards your heel. Just that little bit of movement, effectively feeling the movement go forwards and backwards through the arch of your foot. So that big muscle at the bottom, or big muscles, I should say, at the bottom of the foot get worked a little bit. As I say, there's that pivoting from your ankle. And again, just notice that when you make that, there's hardly any movement at all visible in your ankle. But if you look at what I'm doing, see how far my shoulders have gone. Same principle as before, that as the movement moves up your body, provided you're moving as one unit, then you will inevitably get more movement. Once again, if I demonstrate with the pencil, which I seem to have lost now, you should find a different pen. That will do. There. Oh, good. You can see. You see the black tip. If I move there, then down the bottom it's moved maybe a couple of millimeters, but at the top it moves maybe a centimeter. And this principle applies all the way through Tai Chi. So one of the sayings associated with Tai Chi is that more is less and less is more. If you try less to move in the upper part of your body, that will help your awareness of what else is happening. So the less you move with your arms, the more you'll become aware of what's happening in your spine, your hips, lower back, buttocks, and so on and so forth. And the more you become aware of that, the more everything kind of comes together and works together. And then you build the movement up in that way. Now hold your hands in front of you and imagine you're just got a tray of drinks in your hand. So for the moment, just put your elbows against the sides of your body. It's not that comfortable, I realise, but again, you can see what that means is you can't move your arms independently. And so two things. One is there's already quite a lot of movement in your arms and your hands. And there's a purpose. You're carrying a tray of drinks and you're trying not to spill them. So there's an action within which you're trying to maintain a certain quality of stillness. So the advantage of doing this is that you get familiar with a feeling in your hands that is actually consistent all the way through. When your hands don't carry this sort of very nice feeling here, then you need to just scale back a little bit with your arms and your hands. Think more about what's going on elsewhere in your body, working from the feet upwards all the time. And that's just an ongoing process. You know, you go forwards, backwards, feet, awareness in your feet, and you go forwards and backwards, just learning to have that consistent sort of cycle of movement. Then what you can do is as you go forward, you let your elbows go forwards a little bit and then back. So now you're just expressing that movement that's building through the rest of your body, through the medium of your arms and your hands. You're not creating the movement there. So what we're told in Tai Chi, and this comes from the old writings in Tai Chi, most of you have heard me say this many times before, is the movement is rooted in the feet, because we have that sense of the center of gravity down there that makes us more stable, less weight, less strain on the upper part of your body. Connected or expressed or transmitted through our legs, because obviously as we move the weight, the legs are the next thing in the body that start to move. Controlled by the center of the body. That's not too obvious with this exercise, but it will become obvious later, and expressed through the arms. Always that order. Now again, as you get used to this exercise, try and feel that even your legs are quite soft, so that the bones of your legs actually seem to float within the legs. Now that's quite difficult if your legs are getting tired, I realise, but with practice you'll be able to get a glimpse of it. And then feel what's happening in your pelvis, a slight adjustment in your pelvis as you rock forwards and backwards. And then a bit, again, a sense of your spine floating forwards and backwards. Finally, just the bones of your arms, so that your skeleton is supported within your body, but also offers some support, but it's not locked in. It can move, the joints can articulate, and you've got that slightly stronger feeling building behind the movement. Remember, when your muscles get tired, they fail. When they fail, they stiffen up, and other muscles stiffen up. When the muscles stiffen up, it blocks the movement. So be prepared to rest whenever you need to. So this is a useful little exercise. But we'll move on from this. So remember, you want your weight just a little bit forwards. Think of it settling just behind the ball of each foot. So bring your weight forwards. Once again, just let your hips drop right back, down as far as you're comfortable. Bring your hands down as though you're cradling a ball in the palms of your hands. Don't lose that feeling of carrying the tray of drinks. Pushing up and sinking down. Pushing up and sinking. So the sinking is obviously going to make the thigh muscles in particular work harder. Those quadricep muscles, the more your hips pivot backwards, the greater the effort that they're going to have to make, and eventually they'll just send you back up again. The other thing that needs to happen is to prevent you falling backwards, just soften the tail of your spine so the pelvis can adjust as you sink down. Aware that as you do that, the curves in the small of your back will get shallower as you sink and deeper as you push up. So this is working quite a lot of the body, and it's important to recognize when you've reached that limit. So at a given point, you will feel as though your body is just trying to push you up, and let it come up to that top position and then let gravity pull you down. Don't get caught up in, well, I need to bend more or whatever. That will come with time, because you're thinking, you're depending in a sense on the qualities in your body, on the feeling of movement in your body to tell you when and how to change. If you have a fixed idea about, this is where I've got to get my hips to drop down, and so on and so forth, then you'll just end up forcing yourself into a particular position. Again, rest when you need to. If you want to carry on doing the movements, try and get a chair which enables you to just rest your feet on the ground and to gently press in with feet and hips to try and generate that upward movement. It's a lot more subtle in the chair than most of you have heard me say this before. Now, let your hands come out to your sides and push it up. Wild goose. So I think we don't always recognize the conditioning needed in our body to do Tai Chi. And it's not just in your legs, but it is primarily in your legs to begin with, but also lower back. So don't turn it into a boot camp. And then part in the clouds. Your hands cross. Get the feeling of your hands being pushed up, elbows going out. So one image that we might use for this, that I found it really helpful when I was first presented with it, that when you're down here, you imagine somebody sitting down there and they've just gently taken hold of your fingers. And so you push up and that pulls the fingers out of their grip. Hands carry on, and then somebody's standing above you and they take hold of your fingers. So you let your hips sink, the shoulders drop, and again you pull the fingers out of the grip. When we use these kind of images, we encourage our body to move differently. It's the same change of sensation as you might get if you went to pick up a bag that you thought was empty and it turned out that it's quite heavy. You'd go to pick it up, hesitate, and then you'd pick it up again. But in that moment of hesitation, your body would connect more. It would move differently. And it's that quality that we're looking to build in all of the movements in Tai Chi. Developing the connections in the body through which the movement flows, and strengthening those connections and the movement, the energy itself. One more. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. So the classic image is always, of course, as though you're moving through water. Water providing the right sort of resistance to encourage the sort of movement we want. Resisting, but with a soft yielding quality that encourages that same quality in ourselves. We sort of know if you're in water, you want to, if you're in a swimming pool, you want to get to the edge or something like that. Then if you're stiff, it's going to be much harder work. Once again, realize this is an unusual way of moving. If you've ever been swimming after a long gap, if you don't swim regularly, then you go for a swim for a half an hour, your muscles will ache, even though it felt really kind of fluid at the time. And it's the same with Tai Chi. When we start to move in this way, we engage more of the body, quite often parts of the body that are underused. Once again, practice helps to just gradually build the strength of those areas. For these first 4 exercises, first 6 really, if we count the faster movements, well, no, not those ones, but what we've been doing is going up and down in the hips. When we change to pushing in 4 directions, you're going to maintain this posture. You're not going to come up unless your legs are tired. So the hips and buttocks overhanging, a sense of movement downwards through your body, just as you've got now, except that it's much more subtle. Here you have the pull of gravity working down through your body. And here, as you push up, you have the natural resilience of your body pushing back against gravity until gravity takes over again. So we have a cycle of movement, downwards with the pull of gravity, upwards with the springiness of our body. And that's not going to stop just because we stop moving the hips up and down. So this time, come to rest here. Just stand for a moment. Recognize that pull down through your body. See if you can feel the movement upwards. And then hands to your sides, pushing up, feel your back lengthening a little bit. Just do the first and the last moves a couple of times. Hands coming back down to the sides, take your time. Start to lift up again, but drop your elbows so you push to the sides, feel your back broadening, and then back. Again, a massaging feeling in your back, hips still dropping back. If you do this, it will tighten up your lower back and it won't feel nearly so comfortable. And it'll be really difficult to add the turning in because you'll have stiffened up. So this time, when you push out, turn in the middle of your body as you did earlier. Just changing the angle that your arms push out at. And then back. Turn in the other direction. Remember what I was saying before about not overdoing the movement in the center of your body or indeed anywhere else. So 3 aspects to what we're doing. Obviously, there's a very strong physical aspect. There's the awareness that we cultivate and develop. And then there's the movement, the energy, the flow. The 3 treasures of Tai Chi, the 3 jewels, which just begin to overlap and harmonize. When you push out, notice what your elbows are doing. See where my elbows are, they're hanging down like that. If you stiffen your elbows, you'll create tightness in your shoulders. Imagine somebody's just gently leaning on your shoulders. See there, my elbows are lower than my hands, lower than my shoulders. Then letting your hands drop. Pull your fingers back. Again, elbow slightly curved, hands swinging up, and then down the center line of your body. As we go through the different movements, we become much more aware of the internal movements, the little pathways that we feel developing. We also become aware of areas that may feel a bit blocked, and sometimes just by bringing those three elements together, body, mind, and movement, and working with that, we can find ways to release them, to harmonize the movement. Now, this one, if it's going to be comfortable for you, turn, don't twist the knees around, don't twist your back. So the turn is from your hips, comes up through the whole of your torso, the shoulders. And then switch sides. Good, and then add in the turn if it's comfortable. I'm only turning maybe 20 degrees in the center of my body. Keep your body upright when you do this. Some of you are turning a long way. It's noticeable that the further you're turning, the more you're inclined to lean forwards. If you can, watch yourself watch your image, or do it in front of a mirror at some point. Sink down and push up and row in a boat in the middle of the lake. Hips go backwards. That's where your attention should be. Very careful with your knees and your back. And then your hips drop back down and your head comes up. And then you push up. We're constantly asked in Tai Chi to revise how we view the body. We tend to think of ourselves as being sort of like facing forwards, where we can see, and shoulders, head, neck, and of course the arms and the hands are the primary things that we notice in the first instance. Tai Chi requires you to reverse that completely, so that first and foremost you're aware of your feet, and then your legs, and then your hips. That change of view is also something that we need to cultivate through practice. And then polishing the table. So I deliberately turn my back. I turn, I push my hips back, and I turn again, I turn the opposite way. My hands are being held level with my hips. And when I turn and my hips go back, my shoulders will go forwards. If my shoulders go forwards, so will my hands. I'm not trying to thrust my hands out. They just slide out. Remember, polishing the table. If you were standing by a table and you pushed your hips back, your shoulders would go forwards and your hands would slide forwards on the table. So again, don't stretch out with your hands. If you stretch out with your hands, you'll do this, you'll start to stumble and quite possibly put your back out or straining your knees again. One more time on each side. Good, and then shake out. So the saying is sometimes in Tai Chi that as you get better, you move less. What that means is you see less movement. The movement becomes much more subtle. Now, what I was saying earlier about circling palms, if I just turn a little bit here, if you look at my hand on my belly, not this hand, the lower one, that's as far as it goes. Nor do I do this. You see, now what I've done now, can you see me pulling over? The other thing to think about is I'm going to take this hand down. I get to there and I think, oh, I can go a little bit further. Look, I'm now leaning forwards. So I don't want to do that. If I want to go further, I need to create more space here. I create more space here by sinking down more. Now I can go further. But if I come up here, I'm automatically being pushed out. So there aren't any set rules here about how far you should be turning. You're going to be governed by the sensations you're getting back from your body, which are the sensations we learn here in this exercise. That first one, when we did this one, should feel like that all the way through as much as possible. Now, from the parallel stance here, feet are hip width apart. If I get something, this will do. So if I put this stick down here like this, I'll straighten it up a little bit. Oops, that's not straightening now. There you go. So here I'm stepping. You can see my foot is right next to the stick there. And what I'm going to do is I turn one foot out, and the second foot, when it goes forwards, goes to there. Not there, but there. So the same width, if you see what I mean. You have to imagine those parallel lines going through. This is a shorter, narrower step than our normal stance. I need to get out of the way before I trip over it. In terms of length, it's about the same as the width. So it's not a long stance, but make sure that you've got clear space between your front heel and your back toes. This, although it may feel more comfortable at the moment, actually you're going to be more inclined to do this. If you look at my knee, you see how my knee's overextended? Because I'm trying to go forwards. I lose stability and I strain the knee. When I'm in this position with that little bit of space, doesn't have to be a huge step, I'm more likely to be able to stop here. And I'm less likely to compensate in the upper part of the body. The other thing is that as I transfer my weight, which you can start doing now, I never lock the knees forwards or backwards. So, again, you need to play around with exactly where your feet will be until you feel that you can comfortably allow the transfer of the weight. So when you go forwards, you go to about 60% of your weight forwards, and the weight settles behind the ball of each foot. When you go back, you go to about 70% of your weight. Then you will find that your weight tends to go into your heel. Now that's awkward, because when I go back, I've got maybe 50% of my weight in my back leg, and now I go back more and I'm falling over. And the obvious way to stop myself falling over is to do this. And I instantly strain the knee. So in the backward movement, the weight goes down into my back leg. It touches the heel, but then it has to come forwards. And there's two things to consider with that. One is to know where you want the weight to go. So that's just behind the ball of each foot. And the other is to make sure that you're not holding your back stiff. If I'm holding my back stiff, the pelvis won't cooperate and that. So it's essentially, as I go back, and I'm exaggerating wildly, I go back and my pelvis has to tuck under a little bit more. So be careful as you go into your back foot. You may not get 70% there at the moment. Now again, it's a fluid movement. Again, I'll remind you of that tray carrying exercise. If you can get the fluidity in your legs, then it will transmit to the upper part of your body. But what I would say is, if going back to the conditioning of your legs, then this is the ideal exercise to do that with. It will help to strengthen the muscles in the correct way, but also help to keep a softness there because of the movement going through it. And it feels as though your knees are being very gently massaged by the movement. Always sinking down. 60%, 70% of your weight. These are guidelines. These are maximum amounts at the moment. Now, if you take your weight back, say you've got your 70% there. If you simply raise your front toes by flexing the ankle, a little bit more of your weight will drop back. Be careful of the knee. When you go forward, you settle the weight, heel comes up, hip drops back. So gradually, we learn to take more of the weight down through our leg and our foot into the ground, through the hips, through your knees, through your ankles, so that more and more of your weight becomes stable through one leg. So what's happening in your lower back, your shoulders as you do this. And then if you feel ready for this, when you've got as much weight as you can there, you just gently pull the front foot in, push it back out. Remember that hip width stance. Don't step to there, everything will start to go wrong. Swing the foot out and go forwards. Raise your back heel, bring your foot in, and then push back and down. And then shake out. So now on the other side, turn the foot out, step forward. If you've got somewhere at home, got floor tiles or maybe floorboards or something like that, something that has parallel lines or already, that can be very useful if they're the right dimensions. Same thing, just monitoring what's going on in your legs. Are there points where you feel as though your joints are stiffening up? And if so, can you do something about it? You know, if you come forwards and maybe you can feel your front knee tightening, can you just let the knees soften and feel what happens in your hips and muscles of your legs as you do that? If it's tough on your knees, then you can do the same thing in a chair, as long as you can feel the weight going into your leg. And sometimes that's a good way to identify where the reaction is coming and how to overcome it, how to sort of like gently remove that tightening. With when there's less weight, it's harder to read, but of course it's gentler on your legs. So then you're ready for this, raising your toes and your heel. I would regard this as one of the key foundation exercises. And then stepping in. And I think that's a common thing that you'll find in Tai Chi. This was the third exercise I did in Tai Chi in 1983 when I started. And still to this day, I regard it as an exercise that I'm still developing, still working on. So then if you want to, just taking a few steps through. Take your time, just place your toes, settle yourself. Step forwards and out. Remember those parallel lines. The width of your step, although at first it feels awkward, should allow space for your pelvis and therefore your center of gravity to sort of drop through towards the floor, which is what you're wanting to happen. Then going back, raise your toes, front toes, bring the foot in. So your foot traces out a semicircle. It might be divided into two. If you feel a bit wobbly, put the foot down, settle yourself, settle your hips, and then step back. It's about being able to take the correct step, not about whether you can stand for any length of time on one leg. And then shake out. Have your right foot forwards and then fisherman cast the net. Once again, not leading with your hands. Remember this exercise we did carrying the tray of drinks. Same feeling in your arms. Your hips move, your shoulders move, your elbows move, your wrists move. Your fingers follow all of that. And then just as you arrive in the front leg, there's a bit of momentum there that swings them forwards a bit more. And when you arrive in your back leg, they swing back a little bit. If there isn't sufficient momentum there for them to go forwards and backwards any further, don't fake it by straining to move them. Rather, think about what's happening in your legs. And again, be patient, be gentle with yourself. Don't force the movement. Now this time, when you go back, hold your hands in front of you, turn towards the angle of the back foot, bring your hands in, turn back to the front, and go forwards. So you're rolling a ball around. Just let my hands stay in line with my shoulders and more or less the same distance from my body. A little bit of extension, just like when we were carrying the tray of drinks. So some of you will be familiar with stirring the beans, but it's a little bit different to that. Good. Okay, and then change over. Your other foot forwards. And fisherman cast the net. Foot's out of line there. Easy and gently. And then leaving your hands at about hip height, coming back, turning, just gently taking the hands around in the circle. You can begin to just extend by straightening your elbows a little bit. And then as you sit back, just turning your front foot out, go forwards, raise the back heel, step through and sweep around to here. Bring your hands in as you raise the back heel, step through and sweep around. So it's like you're walking through long grass and you're just putting the foot there and then you're just sweeping the grass aside. And then you go back and step through and again, sweeping around. Bring the hand in, step, sweep around. And one more time. Good. And then bring the feet down. Let your hands drop down. Shake out. Good. Now rubbing your hands together. And this little exercise will help to just release some of that stiffening in your muscles, hopefully. But also just, again, there's an awareness thing going on here. Move your head and neck down to one shoulder. Arm. Other side. Your back. Around your hips. Legs. Right on your belly. And the upper part of the chest. So rooting down, centering, quietening, settling your attention, and so on and so forth are really all the same process. Nothing in Tai Chi is purely of the mind or purely of the body. There are always different elements involved in all of the three treasures, body, mind, and energy. So Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain, works on all those levels. It's a very useful exercise because we do tend to lose the root. We do tend to lose the center. We lose that sense of stillness, of stability, and so on and so forth. We lose it when we're doing Tai Chi all the time. But we certainly lose it out there in the big wide world. There's plenty of things to stress us out and to throw us off our center. I always take heart from a quote from a very well-known teacher called T.T. Liang, when he's obviously somebody had said to him, you know, oh, you're always in such perfect balance or something. His response was to say that he'd lost balance all the time. He got it back all the time. And I think that's quite encouraging because I lose it all the time. So this idea of returning to the mountain, coming back to this grounded posture, and everything it implies in terms of mind, body, and energy is a really useful thing. It's why it's here at the end of the session. So you sink down and you push up, and two ideas to associate with this. One is if you can feel the pull of gravity through your body, then as you start to push up, essentially against it, it's a very soft movement, like moving through water. But the further you extend out and up, the more likely you are to lose that quality and to stiffen up. And if you're aware of that and aware of those sensations in your body, there's an automatic return. Round about here, it's like, nope, not going to go any further with this. I'm going to go back, find the root again before I start again. So an awareness of how forces are acting on our body gives us a natural cycle that will bring us back to that centered feeling, that rooted feeling, just as an out-breath leads to an in-breath. And that's quite useful. That's an intuitive thing that develops over a period of time. The second thing is in a way a little bit more contrived, but still very useful, which is to see if you can identify maybe one or two things that help you come back. It could be the pull of gravity on your hips, could be some kind of sensation elsewhere in your body, could be the rhythm of the movement as I've just described it, could be the image of the mountain, the idea, you know, the stillness, the sensations that the mountain produces. Could be lots of different things. This is a very personal thing, something that you can carry with you out of the session, just to remind yourself in those moments when you start to lose it, like T.T. Liang, how you might be able to get it back. One more time. And stand. And shake out. Lovely. Thank you very much, people. So as always, do feel free to email me with